at the Carnivore. We hope you're going to be there. Adrian is headlining there as well. We are live on YouTube this morning as well, which I always tell the guests after they've come into the studio, because a lot of them are like, I'm not coming on there. We are actually live on YouTube. So we have Rose Wachuka, Chief of Staff, Office of the Chief Justice, representing the Chief Justice in studio with us this morning. Rose, welcome back.
Thank you, Fareed.
Great to have you. We did have a wonderful conversation towards the end of last year. And it's great to have you back in the studio.
Thank you.
Because this is a topic that is literally discussed and talked about daily. Yes. And we have so much to get through this morning. But before that, how are you? How was your morning? How has your week been? I know it's been a crazy week here in the country, across the country, but how has your week been?
Inspiring.
Okay.
It's been inspiring, but if I'm being very vulnerable, I am exhausted.
Okay.
But for good cause and for good reason,
Right.
because we've been preparing to host over 30 Chief Justices in the country next week, which is the largest number that Kenya has ever hosted. And obviously I love the process of preparing, but sometimes it can take a toll on the body, so I relax on the tennis court. Fareed, if you want to catch a game, let me know.
I'm seriously, I played tennis for many years.
Yeah, that's how I ease off steam.
That's great. Let's play tennis.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay,
So
I'm very
I am
serious about
inspired. I am also inspired by
Right.
the resilience of the Kenyan people and the ways that we are protecting our country.
Yes, wonderful. And we've had a bit of a up and down couple of weeks, obviously, through what has been going on Monday initially, and now Monday and Thursday. We're not going to get into that. We speak about that every day here at
Yeah.
And you can catch more on that Monday evening with me and David Sayega on Global Digest, a 1-hour talk show, but that's separate from what we're discussing this morning. It is great to have you back as a guest, and obviously we are talking about the social transformation through access to justice vision, which is something that, is new.
Yeah.
That our Chief Justice has brought in, the wonderful Chief Justice we have, who was also a guest here last year, earlier in the year. We had a great conversation as well. And what I like about the mandate and the vision is that it's not just talk. When she came in, she was relatively new to the position, and a lot of what she said was going to happen within the realm of justice and the judiciary has actually happened, or is in the process of happening. So let's just get right into it. You said you have 30 Chief Justices coming in from all over the continent? Yeah.
Next week.
And then the purpose for that is?
We're going to talk about the role of judiciaries in climate change, in combating climate change. And that is part of the Chief Justice's vision, what she told you when she came over, that her vision is to make sure Nairobi becomes the hub for judicial dialogues in Africa, which is an entire conversation. And she's the first Chief Justice to host the 3 most critical meetings in Africa, here in Kenya. 2 in Nairobi and 1 in Mombasa.
That's wonderful, and that's amazing. And obviously we are becoming now, which is great, because it kind of shows us that we're becoming kind of the bastion of what a judiciary should look like, or should aim to look like, if we are now the hub for all of these guests to come and learn and interact and network as well. And what's nice about it is, and we talked about it when we met before you came on there just now, we are moving from the I guess we can say that the colonial form of the way a judiciary should run, which is fine because that's what we knew, to the way, because Africa's needs and wants are very different, right?
Very, very different. And to substantiate that, we are moving from sort of isolationist, inward justice to people-centered justice. And what people-centered justice means, Fareed, is that people own their justice claims, people own their justice obligations, and the judiciary midwives that process of ensuring that people understand their rights, people understand how to resolve disputes. Did you know that only 10% of Kenyans actually seek legal redress through courts? 90% use families as a first medium, communities, communal institutions, the police, and other structures of government. And only 10% come to courts. And because the Constitution, as an inspiring, transformative charter, places the responsibility on the judiciary to actually be the custodian of the Constitution. It's the house that the Constitution finds warmth. And so we have and are looking at justice not just from an institutionalized or formal perspective, but from a holistic perspective, in incorporating informal structures, indigenous methods, and other ways to make sure that those disputes are owned by individuals and communities, and many of them resolved there.
But what you're essentially saying is we may have done things differently pre-colonization, and we need to incorporate those things into a legal framework that then becomes the law, maybe not the right term, but that when, if you're saying that mediation with families, communities, etc., growing into a situation where now it is overseen by the judiciary, so that whatever the decision is the legal and final decision, but you're saying incorporating the things that we know as Africans.
And we don't have to institutionalize them, because that's a problem. When you formalize things, you create a barrier to access. So what we mean is we have to recognize them and encourage them. And an example is alternative justice systems, that is really working with communities to resolve some of the most pressing needs. In Kajiado, we had a case that had been in the court for over 35 years, resolved in an Ukumbi suit, that's an AJS suit. And so what we are doing is recognizing that the agents of justice are the people themselves.
Okay.
And people know how to resolve these disputes for it.
Right.
And so we need to, because a barrier is a formality. Formality is a barrier. And look at the case of the small claims courts. The small claims court is a largely informal. I mean, the processes, filing processes to the small claims courts are largely not really stringent and formal, and you can lay your claim in a simple sheet of paper, present it in any registry, any small claims registry, and within 60 days you get your decision. We also have mediation. For instance, if families resolve 90% of disputes, what are families doing in court? And so the Chief Justice has a targeted, very targeted strategy to make sure that the family division becomes real time, because families belong in communities to resolve those disputes and to be the social glue to our society, not in disputes and confrontations in court.
And is it then advisable to try and solve that problem outside of the court system, i.e. through family mediation, etc., and if you can't, then it goes into the court system where someone else kind of oversees the process?
That should be the way.
Okay.
Access to justice should not be a punishing venture, meaning that we shouldn't try to settle scores by going to court. We need as much as possible to introduce and engage mediation and dialogues, because then that has a lot more lasting positive outcomes. But also, at scale, we have the possibility to resolve a lot more disputes and sort of implement what we are calling judicial hygiene, preventive justice. Just like medicine, think of healthcare. Prevention is better than cure.
Yes.
And so if we can catch and resolve disputes before they get to court, we save a lot of money, we save a lot of acrimony because it's an adversarial system, and we also make sure that we are employing the finite resource of judging, because very few judges in the country compared to the number of people, 7 million legal claims every year. Against about 70 judges, we have to really deploy those resources to the most complex legal problems. And so what that means is that the judiciary shouldn't be like the first stop for resolution. Of course, all the cases that come to court get attention, but the more that we encourage our people to try and resolve those disputes and to give them legitimacy, because I think that's what's needed, that if you can agree and bring that agreement to court, it will be enforced and recognized as binding. That is a game changer.
Right.
Makes all the difference.
And that obviously quickens the process
Yes.
of justice anyway. So if me and my brother or sister have a land issue or a property issue, and we say, this is how we want to see this issue resolved, then we just get the legal stamp in a way to say that's now,
That's resolved.
resolved.
Yeah.
You talked about cases 35 years old. And when the Chief Justice was here,
Yes.
she spoke about this backlog then of cases. People, eventually it sits in court, and I'm sure people are just like, what can you do? And I think that was the old perception of the judiciary.
Yes.
That is changing quite rapidly in the last 2 years. And we've had judges and various positions in studio over the course of the last year or two, and many of them are saying that the pace and the speed, but not the quality of justice, is changing dramatically here in Kenya.
It is. But I would also convince you that also the quality is changing, Farid.
I mean, sorry, changing for the better. No,
yes, for the better.
Because it's quicker,
oh,
it's less
not,
quality.
It's not going down.
Yeah,
it's getting better.
Yeah.
And what we are starting to see is what the Chief Justice has encouraged as shared leadership. That when you sit in court, previously, the lawyer or the party was the owner or in charge of proceedings, so that if you brought a claim to court, sometimes you would say, I'm not ready to proceed, and so let's stand this matter over generally, which are now obsolete terms that that the Chief Justice has actually indicated categorically need to disappear from judicial jargon. And so judges are now in charge of proceedings, because the Chief Justice has been emphatic that when you file a claim, when you file a claim, you must be ready to present yourself to resolve that claim. Because obviously justice is a public good, but justice is not an infinite public good. As I've said, we have finite resources, judges. And so if you bring your matter to court and you're seeking that service or resolution, you must be prepared to make sure that you present that case to conclusion. And so the no adjournment policy is working wonders. But you know what's working better for it? It is having these conversations with the Law Society, having conversations with other connected actors within the realm of the NCJ, which is the National Council on Administration of Justice, so that we are aligned on the vision. The vision is let us deliver justice to the people. And what that means is that the judiciary sits downstream. We spoke about that in October. And so the entities and institutions that sit upstream, how can we support you and how can you support us to resolve the formal disputes in court? Now that's 10%.
Okay.
And also, so also our focus we should not remove our focus from the 90% that are not coming through the formal justice channels. And so, we have the mediation summit opening on the 13th of April, and I encourage people to look that up and to follow that up, because it's the first mediation summit. It is organized in collaboration with the private sector, and it is a perfect example of where dialogues need to happen, micro and macro scale, and that makes all the difference, because then the understanding of justice from a judicial perspective goes and is shared with others, but also the judiciary sits and receives opinions from others on how to just make those processes very, very accessible. And that's how it's changing. It's changing actually because everybody now is coming along to make sure that we don't have adjournments, to make sure that evidence is preserved properly, to make sure that Kenyans are actually empowered in terms of access to legal information, which is a conversation we should have, because access to legal information is a great hindrance to formal access to justice.
And digitization of that information as well is a big thing too, right?
Access,
which is kind of what's happening. We're sort of bringing our justice system into the 21st century, which was something it wasn't before the Chief Justice joined, and a lot of her vision is there. Now, the Chief Justice launched a social transformation through access to justice vision. We've spoken about that. Special focus on protecting the rights of the vulnerable groups.
Yes.
So, how is the access to justice in Kenya since the formation? Has that changed dramatically?
Oh, yes. And it has changed in many, many ways, because, as you know, Farid, we have the court users committees. And the court users committees are in all the courts across the country, over 127 court stations. And what that means is that court users committees bring together justice actors to actually discuss and distill the issues around access to justice in court stations, and then find organic solutions that are contextualized to that particular station. Now, it's changing in terms of moving those justice conversations forward. If you look at the outcomes under the STAJ vision, which we call the social transformation vision, the STAJ vision, there is the element of a strong institution. And since the Chief Justice came into office, she has continued with the legacy of Justice Mutunga and Justice Maraga, CJ Emeritus, to really drive the judiciary into the next level post 2010 of a transformational institution. Remember, the Kenyan judiciary was completely changed and altered by the constitution.
Correct.
And so to stand as a strong institution that Kenyans can actually depend on to even stabilize our democracy, as we've seen in the past year, is a big feat. I mean, the Chief Justice has received many invitations from very eminent international organizations, including very progressive jurisdictions, to ask, how do you do it? How does Kenya manage to hold and the Kenyan judiciary stand as a strong institution?
It's actually crazy because the perception has changed so dramatically just from a public view in the last 2 years.
Absolutely.
It's really, it can only be down to one thing, right?
The Chief Justice was invited to the Aspen Security Forum for precisely this reason, and spent time with very distinguished Chief Justices across the world, just talking about how do you lead a judiciary into being a strong institution. So we are seeing that, and we can't compromise that, because other institutions sort of have term limits and elections every so often. The judiciary stands through those transitions, and so we have to make sure that it remains very strong. The second strand is financing, and since the Chief Justice came into office, she has managed to complete the setting up of the Judiciary Fund, and also to have that judiciary financing enhanced to 3 billion every year. That means that in the next 5 years, judiciary funding will have been enhanced by 15 billion, which will really support to make sure that all the elements that need to be completed, reducing the distance to courts from 200 kilometers to 100 kilometers is realized, and many other elements. But beyond resources, it's also how are we applying the non-financial resources? How are we applying the finite resources of judges? I cannot stress enough how precious and rare and limited the resource of judges in this country is, and that we need to deploy judges to deal with only the most complex legal problems, so that we can continue to really make sure that we stand guard to the Constitution. The other one is deepen partnerships. Conversations with the police, with the DPP, with the Attorney General, giving structure to the NCAJ so that that becomes the place where these actors meet to distill issues.
Okay.
As core equal agents,
Sure.
Chaired and supported by the Chief Justice. And finally, accountability. How do people reach the judiciary to indicate, to sort of if people have grievances about how their cases are being handled in the judiciary, how easy is it for a citizen to walk into a court station, to receive a warm reception, customer care, and to recognize that people own justice apparatus and justice institutions, and for us then to address those issues. And we have a very progressive system that the Chief Justice has put across. For it, if you send to me or you put in that system a problem about a case, you either are concerned about delay, you're concerned that there are issues that are happening beneath the surface, it will not take me more than 10 minutes to send you an update of your case and what we need to do about it.
So we're talking about an entire rebrand.
Yes.
In 2 years, and I know it's still it's a work in progress. It's ongoing, of a justice system that, I mean, can we be honest here and say that was essentially fragmented and a little bit broken before, and maybe that was more the public's perception as opposed to what was happening behind the closed doors of the courthouses? Because what we saw, and I can speak for myself, is I don't really want to take my case to court, not for the reason of that you mentioned in the beginning of the conversation, because I could do it through mediation with family or my community or whatever, just because it was like, is it really going to happen? You know what I mean? So there is a rebrand happening. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we have a number of questions to get through as well, including one that's very interesting to me: online violence becoming prominent, and the UN Women Database estimates that 20% of women in Africa have experienced online violence. What the justice system is doing here in Kenya to address that, is amongst some other questions. If you have any questions, and we've already got a few that have come in, someone asking for your contact for something else, but I'll share that with you off air, and then you can decide if that's okay. If you have any questions, get them in now. 0701-984-984. It is time now for the sports with you, Nia, so stick around as we talk justice and all the great things that are happening in our country in terms of the justice system. Good morning.